Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me back again. Today, what I want to do is very quickly show you two slides, which is all you need to know about sustainability, particularly how it affects this industry. Then I'm going to give you some case studies around what is going on in other industries, as well as some stuff going on in your own industry. And at the end of, as usual, I will throw you a bit of a challenge. I'm delighted with what Graham said when he had his E as an environment and ethics, because that is exactly what sustainability is. It's environment and ethics. So let's just start with a slide. Has anybody seen that slide before? Anybody seen that picture? No. Would anybody like to hazard a guess what that blue bubble represents on the left-hand side over the planet Earth? Anybody want to hazard a guess? That is all the water in the world to scale. And you're going to say, Malcolm, that's not possibly true because the Earth is 75% water. The Earth's surface is 75% water. That is all the water in the world. And guess what? 97% of it is salty. And of the other 3%, 1% is at the top and 1% is at the bottom. And when it melts, it becomes salty. So 1% of that bubble is available to all life, except some things that live in the sea. We use it for our food, our agriculture, we drink it, we even use it for making our power. Okay, so now we know what that bubble is. What do we think the pink bubble might be over that side? Any guesses? It's all the atmosphere. That's the atmospheres of our planet to scale. Anybody know how far space is from the surface of the oceans? 100 kilometers or 62 miles. It is a very, very thin layer of atmosphere. And we do two things. That atmosphere does two things for us. It regulates our temperature. Without it, we would be at about minus 63 degrees. And we breathe it. And today, we have 2,400 coal-fired power stations going 24/7, putting more and more stuff into that pink bubble. For the first time last year, carbon dioxide levels, just one of the gases, but carbon dioxide levels in that bubble went above 400 parts per million. The first time ever that we ever have known that it has been that high. 100% certainty that is human activity, 95% certainty that that's causing global warming. And the thing about those two is those are the two biggest market failures we have ever experienced, because those two things are treated as finite. And the one thing I can assure you is they are not. So they're treated as infinite, and they are finite. They are absolutely not going to grow. And we're doing stuff to them the whole time. And at the same time, the land mass, of course, is the same. We have a population today of 7 billion people. The 7 billionth baby was born last year at the same time. And that's going to grow to 9 billion people by 2050. All trying to live off this finite resources. So that's my first slide on sustainability. My second slide is this one. Has anybody seen this slide before? This is great. I'm teaching lots of people new stuff. Right. Each dot represents the people of a country. That's the first thing. Second thing, this axis along the bottom here, that is the United Nations Human Development Index. That's about how well people are living. And the United Nations say if you are below 0.8, you're living in poverty. And if you're above 0.8, you're living actually a reasonably decent lifestyle. And what you will see is that all these countries, the people in these countries, which are largely the orange dots, are all down here, below the 0.8, to varying degrees, to some really pretty desperate places. And you will see they are orange, and they are Africa. So all those people are living in poverty. 1 billion people go to bed every night hungry. So notwithstanding what Graham was saying about the middle class is getting richer, there is 1 billion people, the bottom billion they're called, who are going to bed hungry every night. And I think we would all agree that that's really quite not fair. Does anybody disagree with that? Would everybody disagree that we shouldn't be trying to do that? Unanimity. So everybody would agree that it would be right that we move all those people in those countries above 0.8. The vertical axis is the ecological footprint, the amount of land and resource you need to use on the planet in order to live that lifestyle you're leading. And the top ones have on average, this is produced by WWF by the way, the top ones are about 10 hectares of land per person in that country, and the top two are orange, which are in the United Arab Emirates. And then the green one, which is the next one down, of course, is the US. And if everybody used the same amount, if we all used the same amount of land, then in 1961, which is called the biocapacity, in 1961 the biocapacity of the world was there at about 3.9 hectares. And the biocapacity, because of course the world is getting more people on it, is now just below 2 hectares per person. And that line, of course, is dropping. And I think we would all agree in an equitable, fair world, which is where the ethics comes in, that it would be fair and right that each person on the planet has the right to the resources the same as everybody else. So we need somehow to move all these people who are actually living well to live within the Earth's planetary boundaries. So we want to do that. Ergo, to have a world where everybody lives well within the planetary boundaries, leaving the planet available for the next generations, because we're not using up all the resources, everybody in the world needs to be in that blue box. Anybody notice something about that blue box? It is empty. The last country, a blue one, a light blue one, the last country to leave that blue box was Cuba in 2010. There's a thing called Earth Overshoot Day. Has anybody heard of Earth Overshoot Day? Again, produced by WWF. Earth Overshoot Day is the day when, in terms of the ecological footprint, the day in the year when we have used up a year's worth of natural resources. Every year it gets earlier in the year. This year it was on the 20th of August. So every day from the 20th of August to the end of the year, we are eating in to the planet's resources in a way it can't replace them. The last time the Earth Overshoot Day didn't happen, so in fact we were in balance, was 1974. Since then, we've been eating into the Earth's natural resources. This is why I do sustainability. Because if you're like me, you're an optimist. This is the biggest single market opportunity there has ever been, because humans tend to sort it out. The companies that work out how you operate in that space are the ones which will be the companies of the future. The biggest single market opportunity we faced. And then you think about travel, you think, what do you hear about travel? What's the thing you hear most often about what travel does? It creates economic wealth in developing nations. It does this bit. So how do you do that? How do you run businesses that actually achieve that and you can prove it and do more of it at the same time as doing that bit? So now I'm going to get slightly technical. We have to move to a world, and we're doing a lot of work on this. We talk on big stages at the UN and places talking to governments about this. We have to move from a world which moves away from measuring inputs and outputs, which is the way we've measured stuff up till now with our capital markets and the way we all do our accounts and our management accounts. And we have to move to something where we measure what's the outcome of what we're doing, what's the impact of that, and what's the value of that impact. Because unless we're having positive value, positive impact value, we're doing more damage. And if we can find companies, if we can find ways that companies can measure that, now we're in a good place. It all starts here. Every company must make a profit. I'm a capitalist. I'm unashamedly a capitalist. I'm not a green tree hugger. Every company must make a profit, because without a profit it can do nothing. You can't even start to think about that blue box if you haven't got a profit. But in the interconnected world we live in, this group of people have more and more and more influence over how you operate. They create your license to operate. They create your reputation. And you know what? Apart from these shareholders, this lot really don't care about that. They care about one or more of these four things. They care about what am I doing, or what are you doing for the economy where you operate. what are you doing to the communities in which you operate? What are you doing to the environment? And interestingly, do you pay taxes in the places where you should? And if you can get all that in balance, you start to get to a world where you can do good, make a profit, and actually create a positive impact. It gets really quite complicated. For 2.5 years, I've had a team of economists in my team working on this, all sorts of different types of economists. You can put a value on all those things. You can put a social value on all those things. The value to society of the outcomes and the impacts you are having. And you can then start to assess, how do I do things in a different way? How do I do things which are better? Reduce negative impacts, increase positive impacts, and still make a profit. And have a real difference. Now I'm going to give you just a few case studies of a few companies that have been doing this stuff in certain areas of this quadrant and pushing the boundaries. The first is a company called Puma. Now, you've all heard of Puma, right? Puma make shoes and sports clothes. They did one of these on the environment side only. They said, what is the social cost of the environmental impact of our operations? Not just in our operations, up here, but in all the way down or all the way up our supply chain to our tier 4 suppliers, which are our agricultural inputs. And what they discovered when you put the social value of their impacts is that 57% of their impact was in tier 4. 83 million euros of societal cost in their tier 4, which is cotton, leather, and rubber production. And they looked at that and they go, wow, we'd never thought about that before. We've always just focused on our operations. We've only just focused on what we do. And in fact, Puma were focusing at that time, before they did this analysis, on their waste, which is that dot there. And you can see that they could focus on their waste until the cows come home, and they wouldn't really affect what's going on in the planet. Just as an example, change of land use, which is largely to do with leather and cotton. They looked at that and they said, what on earth does that mean? That means that's a huge, great risk in reality, because the higher the societal cost, the higher the risk. That represents 110,000 hectares of land. In the world we're talking about, 7 billion people going to 9 billion people, 1 billion people a year going to bed hungry. What are Puma, who makes shoes and shirts, doing with 100,000 hectares of land? And then you think about, imagine the conversation in the boardroom where Puma's strategy is to double in size. And you're going to say, we're going to double in size. And we're assuming business as usual. You're assuming business as usual, which means we're going to need another 110,000 hectares of land. How's that going to work in this resource-scarce world we live in? It's not credible. It's just not a credible strategy. So they have a strategy now of getting rid of tier 4, because that's a massive risk to their business. It's also a risk to their products. And this is what we get. They now have produced their in-cycle range. Has anybody bought a Puma in-cycle range product? If you're in London, go to Carnaby Street, their flagship store. You can buy the biodegradable shoes, you can buy the recyclable shirts. They have created shirts products which have no virgin raw materials, agricultural raw materials. And they have a whole system. The shoes, actually, they can't recycle. The shoes biodegrade into nutrients which grow more products. The clothes actually get broken down and are recycled. So they have fundamentally changed the way they run their business based on better insight about the impact they were having on the planet. Let's talk about Accor, bring it slightly closer to home. Accor did a similar study of their total impact up and down their value chain of what they're doing. This is waste, right? And most hotel operators, they focus on that 5%. They focus on that, what's the waste of the operator, the hotel waste, and focus on that. You can see that is only 5% of the total impact of a hotel over its entire life. 68%, 2/3 of the waste, is in the building and the refurbishment of the hotel. Graham talked about regulation. increase in regulation. One of the places which is getting regulated the fastest and the first all over the world is waste. Landfill taxes, illegal dumping, all those things. If you don't understand this, you are probably building hotels which you cannot afford to take down because they're built with 68% waste in them. They're not being built at the moment in ways which would allow you, at the end of its life, to take it back down. And you won't be able to afford to in the future because these regulations are coming in so fast. Water eutrophication I'm going to talk about next, a long word which means polluting water. And everybody knows what hotels do about their polluting water, right? Please don't have your towels washed every day. What percentage of water eutrophication, because that's all to do with water eutrophication, right? It's to do with polluting water from detergents. What percentage of a hotel's life cycle operations is in the water eutrophication of washing laundry? Any guesses? And this is Accor's numbers. 5%, you're way too high. 2% of water eutrophication is caused by, in the overall hotel operation, is caused by washing the stuff. Almost all of it is in the food and bev, because without food and bev, you don't have a hotel. This hotel, can you imagine it without a bar and without a restaurant? How many hotel operators even think about that? Even think about how that might happen. That, by the way, is all on Accor's website. You can download it. They've put their full report on the website. Let's go close to home. I want to talk a little bit about British Land and talk about economic impacts. Because that's what I hear so much in the travel industry, is we create more economic wealth in developing countries, or in the places where we serve as our destinations. British Land, they do detailed economic studies every time they go for planning permission. And most of you have heard of British Land, right? They're a FTSE 100 company in the UK, one of the two largest construction companies in the UK. And most of their construction sites are large office buildings. They're building, they're not the architect for, by the way. They're building that thing in London called a cheese grater that melts cars. That's British Land. They build large office blocks and large retail parks. That's what they do. And for every one of those planning permissions, they have to do an economic study of what would the economic impact be of this building in this region. We said, let's take it down your supply chain and see what else happens as you build buildings. And they discovered this. The red dots are the number of jobs they create, and the yellow dots is the amount of economic value they create for the region where they created the jobs. Bear in mind that I just told you that most of their building sites are in London. And you're all familiar with the map of England. This doesn't work quite so well in the States. They're down here. But look where they create jobs. How they manage their value chains, how they manage their supply chains is fundamental to where they create economic generation. Think about your industry. Think about what you do, where you do it. Do you understand how you create economic activity in different places by the way you organize your supply chains? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever picked it apart? I haven't met a travel company yet that really understands this. Just so you understand, this is Bolton. In Bolton, there is a steel mill. British Land chose to source the steel for their Leadenhall market development from Bolton, rather than from China. 499 jobs for over 12 months. Lots and lots of economic value. They build nothing in Northern Ireland. Think about the possibilities, about what you do in your industry. How could you do things differently if you understood this stuff? And on the left there, for every £1 million they spend on construction, they are currently generating 31 jobs in the UK. That's a pretty compelling story. And now all that is built into their management decision making. These are new dashboards for running their business. Coca-Cola, we all know about Coca-Cola. Has anybody heard of the 5x20 program? This is great. 5x20 program. Muhtar Kent, the little bottle at the top represents Live Positively, Coca-Cola's 7 key strategic themes. And one of those 7 is the 5x20, which is the economic empowerment of 5 million women in the developing world by 2020. Quite a mouthful, But more to the point, what on earth is Coca-Cola doing with the economic empowerment of 5 million women in the developing world by 2020? The key is that for Coca-Cola, their key growth market is the developing world. And you don't distribute Coca-Cola in the developing world the way you do in the developed world. It gets distributed through mom and pop shops. And the key is here. 76% of the mom and pop shops are owned and run by women. So if you want to control and have a loyal distribution network, you need to have financially literate women. So what do? We give them access to business training. We give them access to finance. We create peer networks for them. So they can run their businesses better. They get a loyalty to you because you help them. And you get a distribution channel. This is not some philanthropic venture by Muhtar Kent. This is of the 7. This is Muhtar Kent, the chief executive's personal one he looks after. This isn't some philanthropic thing. This is about the growth of Coca-Cola in a way that, by the way, helps local people. And finally, I'm going to talk about a big, bad, dirty company, Anglo-American. Of course, I put that in inverted commas. Anglo-American, of course, is one of the world's largest mining companies. You can download this off their website. It's actually, I looked at it this morning just to check, it's gone blue. They've done a new version of it. The Socio-Economic Assessment Toolkit. For every one of their mine sites, and it's a huge, great book, for every one of their mine sites, they report on the SEAT every quarter. It is fundamental to the way they do business, is what is the social and the economic impact our mine is having on the communities in which we operate, and can we improve it? This is about license to operate. This is about getting into that blue box and being the only one in there and getting more franchises for more mining because you are the responsible miner. This isn't fanciful stuff. This gets reported on every quarter at the main board. No financial numbers in here. So I guess my challenge for the industry is this. Given what I've said, given what you do as an industry, put aside the getting here or getting to a destination, because actually the technology around removing emissions out of transport is getting quite good, and I have every faith we'll get that sorted. Put that to one side. In this industry at the moment, we've had things like Travel Life, which I'm sure Mark will talk about, which are standards which raise awareness in communities about how do you raise the environmental performance of a hotel. But it's not at the level we're talking about here. It's the start of a journey. I want to challenge the industry to think a bit more than that, to think about, once you've got to a destination, you think about those different impacts I was talking about, shouldn't you have a net positive impact? Because if you don't, it means you're having a net negative impact. And as an organisation, as a group as a peer group, if you're taking people to different destinations, to different communities, and having a net negative impact, why would they let you do that? So my challenge is this. Can you look at these different things? Can you work out how you do it? And can you, as an industry, be net positive? Because if you have an industry for the future. If your industry is net negative, I hate to be a doomsayer, but why would anybody want you there? If in the round, when you balance it all off and you've looked at the trade-offs between some environmental impact and some creating some jobs and creating some economic wealth, if you are not net positive, why would you be allowed in that destination? I was going to stop here, but I found something, and I've got just a few minutes left, and they told me if I got through it quick enough, I could show you this. I found something. I had the privilege of being with the chief designer of Google Earth last week. And she's a lady with a huge, huge brain and a huge team of people with big brains. And I found they've taken all NASA's data of the whole planet since 1984 and digitized it, so you can now do time-lapse series of the whole planet, any area of the whole planet, from 1984 to 2012, and watch what happens in different parts of the planet, focus in on them. Could we switch over to my laptop, please? And we'll see if we can get it up. Are we there? Hello? Oh, it's because I've gone off here. I probably didn't want to show photos. There we go. Sorry, there we go. Thank you. So this, let me just stop it and go back to here. So you can see here, these are the years. 1984 is down here, and this goes through to 2012. And this is Las Vegas. Okay, now watch this. Okay, so you can see the bar going along the bottom. This is the time, up to 2012, and that's Las Vegas. Look at that. I visited Las Vegas actually in 1982, and it had a population of 300,000 people. It now has a population of 3.5 million people. And this is basically a tourist site, right? The only reason you go to Vegas is for the entertainment, because there's no other reason to be there. So that's Vegas growing. Now I just want to, if I can here, always dangerous to use technology on a stage. What I'd like to do is zoom out. Actually, I'm going to stop it. Go back to 1984. I'm going to zoom out a little bit further. And we're going to put it like that. And this is the Hoover Dam, and this is Lake Mead. Okay, now you've seen what happened with Vegas, and I've left Vegas there so you can remind you. Look what happens over the same period to Lake Mead. As we're going, there we go. And about now, look at the corners where the blue touches the edges. I deliberately did that. And we go back again. Do you see what happened to Lake Mead? That's quite scary, really, isn't it? Isn't that brilliant? You can do that for anywhere in the world. You can go and have a look and see what's happening. So I just asked the question, think about what I'm talking about total impact. Do we think the overall impact of what's going on in Vegas is long-term sustainable? Because we're creating jobs in a place where we don't really need to create jobs. We haven't got impoverished people living here. We've got immigrants moving in. But how long can they be there for? I ask the question, but you could think about what you might do with others. And that note, I am going to finish. So my challenge is, can you be net positive? Thank you.